Welcome to the Black Gems Dive In Podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into conversations about inclusive cultures and everything DEI. Your co-hosts are Kua and Kendra, and we're thrilled to be your hosts as we explore the crucial topics shaping our workplaces and communities today. In each episode, we'll unpack insights, share stories, and engage with experts to foster a deeper understanding of how we can create more inclusive environments where everyone feels valued and empowered.
Hey, Kua.
Hey, Kendra.
We're back for another episode.
Another episode of the Black Gems Dive In Podcast.
Yes. So first of all, I'm going to start by saying Happy Pride Month to everyone who celebrates, as well as Happy Juneteenth, which is coming up in a few weeks.
Right, a couple of weeks. And we know in Buffalo, Juneteenth is really big to do, right? Yeah. It's one of the largest, I want to say second largest in the country.
Second or third,
You know, and so that parade is hours long. I know, I'm marching it many times.
I was telling Jamil prior to us sitting down, I said, I'm going to be one of those aunties in the parade. I'm going to get myself on the side. I'm going to get myself a chair, a cooler with some water, an umbrella, and a fan.
Maybe
and
a couple
wave,
beverages.
And wave to people go by. Because this is the first time that I actually can potentially enjoy Juneteenth in the parade. So I'm excited for it.
I feel like I have some client stuff I have to do this year. I might have to do a little bit of tabling or something. But either way, I'm not in the parade. I'll be happy to watch on the sideline with you because it's usually a hot day.
I know.
And it's a long day.
It's a good
long day. But it's a great day.
Yeah,
it's a great day.
Absolutely.
So excited about that. What else you got going on?
You know, a lot, everything, and nothing at all. But I would say it's a lot of things that just great things that are happening. Mm-hmm. I know we talked about on the consulting side. Yeah. Consulting is going great. Out of Bounds is going great. Getting some contracts on that side and floating the curriculum side along with the book. So beautiful. Really excited to continue to grow that business and just to, I would say, even have my voice back.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's been nice to, say what you want to say.
Yes. It's been nice to have my voice back.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah.
So we will go to our diversity dispatch.
Let's dive right on in.
Yes. So our diversity dispatch, and I know, Cool, you'll introduce what that looks like, but it really delivers timely and effective topics for the week. Mm-hmm. And just so everyone is aware of what's going on in the world of DEI. Right. So there's a lot of things that are happening. And so this segment of diversity dispatch is really just going to highlight some of those things that we already see.
Yeah, and so these are high-level things that are happening, like Kendra said, and one of the things we've actually alluded to in many podcasts, right, prior to this, and so this is actually coming from AP News, and it says that a grant program for Black women business owners is discriminatory, appeals court rules. And so y'all know the Fearless Fund out of Atlanta, we've talked about many times, and now they got this kind of first foray into a potential verdict that's going to happen around this case. It says that a U.S. Federal Court of Appeals panel suspended a venture capital firm's grant program for Black women business owners, ruling that a conservative group is likely to prevail in its lawsuit claiming that the program is discriminatory. The ruling against the Atlanta-based Fearless Fund is another victory for conservative groups waging a sprawling legal battle against corporate diversity programs that have targeted dozens of companies and government institutions. And we've talked about a lot of these, right, in our diversity dispatch segment. The case against the Fearless Fund was brought last year by the American Alliance for Equal Rights. This is a group that's led by Edward Blum, and he's a conservative activist that is behind the Supreme Court case that ended affirmative action in college admissions. Blum, of course, applauded the ruling, saying programs that exclude certain individuals because of their race, such as the ones that the Fearless Fund has designed and implemented, are unjust and polarizing. The Fearless Fund CEO and founder, Arian Simone, said that the ruling was devastating for the organization and the women that it's invested in. And she goes on to say that the message these judges sent today is that diversity in corporate America, education, or anywhere else should not exist. She said that these judges bought what a small group of white men, they bought what a small group of white men were selling. And so there's a lot of conversations that are happening. The legal counsel, who also serves as a president and CEO of the Black Economic Forum, said that all options were being evaluated to continue fighting the lawsuit. But we know that this is a part of a larger effort. And we've been talking about this. You remember when David Shands was on the podcast a couple times ago, we talked about this as well and said, hey, everybody, we're ringing the alarm. These are things that we need to be paying attention to because this now sets the precedent of what's to come.
What's to come,
And so the question, that I have is, okay, y'all are striking this down. This was specific for Black women. There were $20,000 grants.
Right.
Now what?
Right.
What else is going to be
what's next? And I know I've seen some social media commentary where other funds similar to the Fearless Fund, not as big, were saying that they're still going to continue their efforts of giving grants to Black-owned businesses, Black women specifically. But this is what was happening in the world of DEI and as well as funding. It reminds me of, actually, I was watching a documentary over the weekend in regards to MoviePass.
Okay.
So I don't know.
I haven't seen this yet.
Yes.
So don't give the people too much.
I'm not going to give too much. But one of the things that Damon John had talked about, so MoviePass, which I don't know if most people know, but MoviePass was $10 a month where you could go see endless movies.
Yep.
And then the MoviePass went away for several reasons. I'm not going to say why. And then now it's being brought back. But one thing that Damon John said, he was being interviewed in the MoviePass documentary, he said, listen, when it comes to Black-led businesses, a lot of times there may be white men specifically who come in, provide equity into the business, take everybody else out, and then they become the sole owner of the business, but it's predatory practices, right? And so because Black-owned businesses don't always get the funding, when they do get higher funding, predatory practices may happen, right? And so it just makes me think about what the Fearless Fund and what they're doing. $20,000, as we know, in small businesses is not a lot, right? I mean, it's something, right? It's great, and it's just starting to level the playing field. But we know that predatory practices happen. We know that legacy is something that we've talked about for a while, right? It's something that's not being talked about in the courts, something that's not necessarily being highlighted here. But this is really laying that leveling that playing field in many ways. However, we know there's those outside forces that's going to keep bringing that down.
So I guess my question in this too is, okay, so y'all are targeting specifically this program for Black women. What are we doing about, and not to say what are we doing as if, they should target all these other groups, but I'm just wondering, if you're setting this precedent, then what about people with disabilities? Are you then going to say, oh, you know what, this specific funding should not be allocated to them because this is discriminatory against able-bodied people? Are we going to then say, oh, this specific grant is for this generation or, I don't know, age or any other diversity characteristic? You can then start to target and say this is discriminatory because me as a cisgender, able-bodied person, I don't fit that and I can't get that specific pot of money. So now it's discriminatory.
Exactly. Well, we may see that happen, right? We may see that happen. However, when it comes to the racial aspect, that's something that that's being put on this platform, right? It's something that's being highlighted. So that's what's going to be attacked because it's the easiest thing to attack right now, right? When you're talking about, the ADA or anything of that nature, I feel like it's a little bit harder to attack because it's more protections in place.
Interesting.
There's more protections in place, but when you're talking about something from a racial standpoint, those protections aren't there yet. Right. I mean, I know we'll talk about this eventually on the podcast where we're talking about the George Floyd Policing Act. Those things, if you put in those stipulations, that's protecting a certain amount of people. So when it comes to this, there's protections that are not in place. And so the courts, especially the conservative courts, can't attack that. Something like ADA is harder to attack.
That's interesting because, we know that I want to say there was a hate bill, like a hate crime bill that was passed specifically for Asian folks. And I want to say that was last year or something like that. And then the conversation kept going, okay, that's great. We celebrate that. How about, the George Floyd Policing Act? How about civil rights, the Voting Act specifically, like the Voting Rights Act, where some of these things have been passed, but they're kind of in
because it's also attacking systems. Whereas when it came to the hate crimes against Asian Americans, that was really geared towards like guns and things like that, right? Whereas when it comes to George Floyd Policing Act and others, you're attacking the systems that are in place that are set up by the government. So it's a slippery slope. There's so much.
There's a lot to unpack there, and I think we need to continue to unpack that. But as a diversity, we wanted to bring this to you from a diversity dispatch standpoint because we had talked about this, y'all. We were ringing the alarm back then to say, hey, everybody pay attention because if this now happens, this can now set a precedent. And the other piece of this is, say this does go to Supreme Court level, we also know that there's a lot of conservative judges that were put in place by the former president, right? And so when we talk about voting and the specific responsibility that we all carry, and our civic duty, these are the reasons. It's not just, okay, the conversation around who's the president. It's around the courts. It's around our local, needs in our communities, right? So we need to start paying more attention, because if we don't, we just sit back, these things are going to be chipped away, So we'll keep an eye on this. But y'all, this is...
And I'm not going to go down my whole voting spiel, but this is what happens when you don't vote.
And I mean, part of it,
not saying, not the whole thing, but this is what happens when now you're starting to see the conservatives coming in. I'm not to get political, but this is
and
what's
I
happening.
think, because there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it, right? But ultimately, we know that it's favorable right now to attack these things, right? Yep. Like this is a notion of one side who has said, you know what, let's go back and make things a different way, right? We don't want to challenge these different civil rights and opportunities that exist and that, folks are fighting for.
Exactly.
But now we're saying we're going to attack what you've been celebrating. Affirmative action. That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to talk about it from an economic standpoint. Yes. So what is this going to look like? So we'll keep attuned to this. There's a lot going on that side, but
I feel like every time we come and talk about these things, I always got to be like,
right. Take a deep breath
because it's a lot. Take a deep breath. Yes. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to go to our hot topic.
Yes. So our hot topic in this segment, we're really talking about just some of the DEI things that are trending, and some of the things that we, of course, have our eye on as well, and provide some analysis and insight into that. And I know in the past with our hot topics, we kind of talked about similar to what we do in the diversity dispatch. But today we're going to actually talk about and celebrate something that is amazing. So on this website, because of them, it says Uncle Nearest surpasses $1 billion valuation.
That's billion with a B, y'all.
B with a B. Billy. $1 billion valuation, becoming fastest growing U.S. whiskey brand in history. I wish we had some clap, like
some cheers,
something that title alone, right? And actually, the next line in this article says, "Now that is worth celebrating."
It sure is. It sure is.
So Fawn Weaver is making history not just for herself, but for rewriting the narrative of American whiskey and honoring a long overdue figure, Nearest Green. Uncle Nearest, the brand Weaver founded to celebrate Green's legacy, has become the fastest growing American whiskey brand ever, according to Forbes. Green, a formerly enslaved man, was the master distiller who mentored Jack Daniel, the founder of the Jack Daniel's brand. Weaver, determined to honor Green's contributions, launched Uncle Nearest in 2017. The company has since exploded, defying the odds, shattering expectations, and tripling sales since 2022. Refusing to follow the traditional path of venture capital or private equity investment, Weaver secured a staggering $225 million from over 160 individual investors, each believing in her vision and Green's legacy. The unique approach allowed Weaver to retain control of the company, ensuring Uncle Nearest remains true to its core mission. That's worth celebrating.
Definitely worth celebrating. Yes. And that's super exciting.
It is.
And it tastes good, y'all. It tastes good. It's good. Outside of Nashville, Tennessee, in that area. And so folks know Jack Daniels. It's a name that everyone knows.
Exactly.
Uncle Nearest, I would say, if you know, you know. But to hear the history behind that and saying that he was the one who taught Jack Daniels how to, distill whiskey and go through that process, to now have a brand that represents, his legacy, and it's Black owned and it's worth a billy.
Yes.
That is definitely worth celebrating.
That is amazing. And I'm a whiskey girl.
A little connoisseur.
And I would say connoisseur. I'm just a whiskey girl. I like to do some whiskey tastings here and there. But I used to be a Jack Daniels person. I used to like Jack Daniels. And then around 2017, 2018, I did find Uncle Nearest, but it was very hard to find in stores. And I remember one of my cousins in DC, he found it and he's like, I'm going to ship it up to you. And I remember holding on to this bottle because I'm like, I don't know when the next time I'm going to see it, because I had it before, and now you can find it and it's readily available on shelves. It's prime location. And so I'm just really excited to hear where this goes. And also too, I was reading that so Fawn was also saying that she is looking for the company to be valued at $50 billion soon. So that's really exciting to hear.
Yeah, it is exciting. And I think, it just prompted, we've been doing like little experiences and things like that. We might need to do a little, Uncle Nearest tasting of some sort. and really just be able to celebrate that, right? In a real way. So excited.
Yeah.
Definitely excited.
Yeah. So more to come on Uncle Nearest.
All right. So we're going to dive into our topic today, right?
Yes.
And I know when we started to talk about this, Kendra got excited, And so just a little bit of background. We both did sports in college, right? I did, D1 track and field at UB, University at Buffalo. And I want to say, it was 1996 when the WNBA came out on the scene. And I remember, I used to play basketball before in high school I got into track and field, but it was such a big thing as a girl to watch and be like, oh my gosh, we finally got our own league.
Yes.
We're represented. It's at the national level. This is exciting. Here we are. And obviously, there's been a lot of conversations that have happened since then.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So similar to you, I was really excited in 96 when the WNBA came about. And really excited to see players who, when they graduated college, they didn't have anywhere to go.
Yes.
And then they came back years later and played in the WNBA. And it was just really great to see. I remember they would have like family days and community days. And I remember going to a few games with my dad back in the day when the Detroit Shock was a team. Some people were talking about bringing that back too, but Detroit Shock. But even at the time, I remember going and ticket sales were like $20. It was, it was crazy. Yeah. I remember going to a Detroit Shock game. The ticket sales were $20 a piece and you got a drink and a hot dog.
That's not a bad deal, especially you got a couple of kids. That's not a bad deal at all.
It's not. And, but also, too, when you're looking at the economic side as you get older, it's not a sustainable model.
Sure.
Which also contributes to kind of what we're talking about today a little bit.
Right.
And then years later, went to see LA Sparks game with some friends, and we sat almost courtside for $80.
And that's, like when you think about the cost of the NBA and what people are paying, right? Like you're paying a grip for season tickets. Like we have a friend who got season tickets. I want to say like for half a season, it was like $50,000, right? So, and this was like, I think courtside, near courtside and things like that. So at this point, there's a lot of conversations that are happening. Obviously, since 96, WNBA has existed.
Yes.
But now there's this big splash.
Yes.
Right? And so there's a lot of folks who are newer fans. More people are paying attention. I think Kendra and I, we talked about when we went to one of the finals games at Las Vegas Aces. Yep. And how much did we pay for that? I want to say like $50.
Yeah, maybe $50.
I don't even know if it was a whole $50.
Yeah, I don't know, but a whole $50. But we had a time.
That was a good time.
It was fun.
And that place was packed, right?
Yes.
So you saw it was a finals game, a lot of folks, a lot of excitement. The place was packed out. And that conversation continues. Right. And there's a couple reasons of that, right? Like the last group of women who are now entering as rookies into the WNBA had a lot of excitement around them. We talked about Caitlin Clark. We talked about Angel Reese. We talked about a lot of these folks who, are taking the game to a different level in terms of the excitement around it from a college standpoint.
Right.
And now that excitement has continued into the league.
Yes.
And what we got to say about it?
So there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. So there's an article on the Sporting News that talked about Shenedy Carter's controversial timeline from Atlanta Dream suspension to Caitlin Clark body check. And not to go too deep into the article, but we all saw this past weekend Shenedy Carter, who kind of checked Caitlin Clark with the elbow.
It was a hard check. It was
it was like a gut check and like push you to the side type thing.
Mabry doubled off to Carter. Her jumper is good. Kennedy Carter now with 12 points off the bench. And Clark. I mean, that's clearly a foul, which was called. The question is, will they call it unnecessary? Kennedy Carter, it happened prior to the inbound. So then anybody can shoot the free throw. Of course, Indiana would have Clark as a great free throw shooter shoot it.
She fell down.
She fell down, yes. Yes. So in this article, it says Shenedy Carter has been under the WNBA spotlight before, multiple times. This time is different, however. The 2024 WNBA draft class, led by Caitlin Clark, has brought in an enormous amount of viewership this year, drawing national media attention for regular season games. Carter body checked Clark during the Sky, which is Chicago, versus Fever WNBA Commissioner's Cup game Saturday, June 1st. She received an away from the foul ball, which was later upgraded to a flagrant one after the game. Clark said it wasn't a basketball play, but she moved on quickly. This isn't the first instance of Carter getting in trouble either. She has a history in the WNBA, which is now coming to light with the newfound attention the league is receiving. And then it goes into this breakdown of what happened.
So she's been traded before. She was on the Atlanta Dream. She was suspended, then traded Carter to the Los Angeles Sparks. So they talked about that. And then she had an elbow injury, and it limited her to 11 games. So it goes on, around her whole history in terms of how she got to this point.
Yes.
And so when we were kind of talking about this, we compared her to an NBA player.
Yes. She's the Draymond Green of WNBA. But this is not new. I mean, Texas A&M, she was very, I would say, tough. I wouldn't say rough, right? She was a tough player. We see it all the time when it comes to the men's side of things. When she came to Atlanta Dream, obviously there were some things happening there. She was suspended for something that was controversial and detrimental to the team. They didn't go into details about that. And now she's with the Chicago Sky. And notably, she is also with rookie Angel Reese.
Yeah.
As well.
And so she's a former number 4 overall pick. And so they talked about like her poor conduct and, and a lot of things. When we talk about Draymond Green, this is a lot of things that come up for him, right? And what was the last one? He stepped on somebody's chest.
Yes.
He, punched somebody out, and got suspended. And so this is well known in when you think about the Malice at the Palace, right? We've talked about this and just the levels in which some of these games get, and not just excitement, but the level of play that happens.
And I was having a conversation with my dad, and he was saying that, again, we know there's a lot of new viewership to the WNBA, but in the game of sports, this isn't something new, right? You see the whole pay your dues, but you see everything playing out even back in the day with Larry Bird.
Yeah.
Larry Bird was a trash talker. Yeah. Right. And Larry Bird had a lot of controversial calls as well, but he was not painted in the same light as some of his counterparts. Right. So you see these moments in time when it comes to the NBA, WNBA. But this most notably, obviously, with Carter and Caitlin Clark, highlights something that's bigger, right? There's a lot of commentary that's going on. So previously we talked about on our podcast where Angel Reese and team, when they played with LSU, they were called Dirty Debutantes.
Dirty Debutantes.
And Caitlin Clark and her team at Iowa were like America's sweethearts.
Yep.
And so I think that narrative is still lingering into the WNBA. There are some who are saying that if Caitlin Clark was a Black woman, if she wasn't a white woman, this wouldn't even have we wouldn't even have a conversation. We know that Carter and her play has always been tough and previously. And some people are painting this in the light of this is the play of people in the WNBA. It's a tough league, right? And Caitlin Clark, she, people are saying she's being targeted. And I would say all rookies are being targeted. Right. Angel Reese has been knocked to the ground. Right. There was a controversial call last week against her as well. Not against her, but someone pushed her down and they end up getting a foul for the play. But this isn't something new.
And she even went on and said, this is just a part of the game. I'm expecting this. And it just makes you rise to the level that you need to rise to. Exactly. And so a lot of folks are countering this message because there's a lot of messages out there. And, to your point, I think there's a lot of layers to this because when you're reading these comments, which Kendra always trying to tell me not to read the comments because the comments be taking me to a different place sometimes. But the comments are talking about her in this fragility state almost, right? Like she's fragile and they're knocking her around and y'all should be grateful that she's bringing this level of viewership to the game. And you should be grateful that now there's all this excitement and now you're going to get paid more and it's all thanks to her. And, that there's a lot of conversation that centers her in the middle of that conversation. Right. When they announced her shoe that was coming out and then all of a sudden now, Asia Wilson's getting a shoe and there's conversations around what that is. And so I think what you're seeing is also layered with what's happening in this country. Yes. And that's the other piece that we wanted to kind of bring to light on our podcast, right? Because we think about intersectionality and all these different things that are playing at once, but you have Caitlin Clark, who's a white player, and folks are holding her in this like savior type light to say that she is bringing us to a different level of this game, and y'all should be grateful, which means, does that mean we shouldn't play hard when it comes to her? Should we handle her with kid gloves when we're playing or whatever? When you see that there's been a lot of controversial things that have happened up until this point.
Right, exactly. And I think about, on top of, we were talking about intersectionality, on top of the racial component, also too, there is commentary in regards to the fact that Caitlin Clark is a white woman, but she's also heterosexual. And so now that's also layered on top. And so people want her to be the face of the WNBA.
Yeah.
I know there's also been commentary back in the day about WNBA and the idea of heterosexuality and what that looks like. It was highlighted a few years ago with a player, I believe her name was Candace Wiggins. I believe that was her name, out of Stanford. And she left the WNBA because she said she didn't feel comfortable because she was heterosexual.
Okay.
And that she felt like she could not be a player in this game. And so this has also been something that's been overshadowing the WNBA for a very long time as well. And so now you have Caitlin Clark, who's put on this pedestal. She's a white woman, she's heterosexual, and now this is a narrative as well. So there's a lot of intersectionality that's happening. But back to what you were saying too, in regards to Caitlin Clark bringing light to viewership or increasing viewership. Angel Reese said the same thing. She said, I've been here too.
Yeah,
I'm contributing as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's just so much that that goes into all of this to this conversation. And I will also say, like, for those who are new to the WNBA, welcome. Welcome. But also too, I encourage people to actually watch a full game. Because a lot of the people who have commentary on this are people who are not watching full games. They're seeing these little sound bites.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at the media and how they're painting Caitlin Clark, to your point about this fragile woman, most of the things that I've seen on social media or even being highlighted is she's looking tired. She's getting hammered in her quotes, right? All these different things. And it's just like, just show the girl playing. Just let her play.
Right.
Just let her play. Let's just watch the WNBA.
And stop reading so much into this because I think it was their general manager, the Indiana Fever's general manager, Lynn Dunn, who expressed anger at Caitlin Clark on-court treatment after a recent incident, obviously, with Shinity, right? And so it was Fox News that reports that Dunn claims opponents are specifically targeting Caitlin, and she took to X, formerly known as Twitter, to express her disapproval, right? And so I know Shinity also came out as well and was like, listen, this is the game. This is hoops. Just play. This is happening to everybody. I know there's a lot of references to like Love and Basketball and, some funny things that people are posting as well. But the reality is, this is now all these alarms are being rung and saying, Caitlin doesn't need to be targeted and whatever. But when you, like you said, if you watch full games and you're really involved, you'll know that that's just not the case. She's a rookie. She has to prove her worth. She does in that way.
And I would say outside of the general manager for the Fever as well, and this is also some commentary that's coming out of the WNBA. The WNBA players ain't worried about this.
Yeah.
Like Asia Wilson's like, I'm just here to play. I'm just here to support my teammates and show up. I'm in season. I'm here to do what I need to do. And so this goes back to what you're saying about some of the things that we're seeing in this country and being highlighted. The people who are actually playing the game are not concerned about what's happening. Yeah. It's the media. And I think it's also being amplified to a point where you had ESPN host
Stephen A. Smith.
You had Pat McAfee, who called Caitlin Clark out of her name.
Right.
Called her a white bee. Yeah. And and I think that just adds fuel to the fire. And although he apologized and said, I'm sorry, the fact that it just rolled off his tongue so quickly because you're now making it into a racial thing, right? And so it's like, all right, everybody calm down.
Well, so the thing is,
take a deep breath.
I think the flip side of this, which is the dope part, is it is in the news, it is in the media. Yeah. And as much as we want to say, people say like even bad publicity is good publicity. Everybody's talking about this. Yeah. Right. So the fact, I think the Stephen A. Smith one. So he had Shannon Sharp on, Monica McNutt that was on as well. And basically he was trying to say, oh, nobody talks about the WNBA and women's sports as much as we do on First Take. And Monica challenged him and was just like, That's cap.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you now all of a sudden you want to talk about, y'all been talking about it, but where were you 3 years ago?
Right.
And kind of called them out. And so you saw this where he's kind of like, oh, you coming at me like this or whatever. But everybody now wants to claim I was on this first.
It's true. But also too, the WNBA is looked at overall now. Before it was a charity case, right?
Right.
It was subsidized by the NBA and it was struggling for years.
Yeah.
And now WNBA is something that people can monetize. It is making a lot of money. They're expanding. So there's expansion teams that are happening as well. And so it is an exciting time for the WNBA. I do think that the WNBA doesn't necessarily have right now the infrastructure in place to continue, not to continue, but to have brand management of players.
Yeah.
You know, they are branding the WNBA as the W, but they really need to look at brand management of players like the NBA does. It's going to take time, obviously, as they're building this infrastructure. But, you know, it's interesting. And yes, it is. WNBA is put into a light that hasn't been in a very long time.
Yeah.
And so, but, you know, like today, there is a game against Skylar Diggins and Diana Taurasi, and that's controversy, right? So it's just like there's so much that's going on. It's like
because they showed Diana Taurasi. I think she kissed
Simone Augustus. That was years ago.
So they started to kind of go back and show like, y'all, they've been on this. They not new to this. They true to this.
Diana Taurasi been throwing stones and putting her hands behind her back for years.
And so now all of a sudden it's, you know, all these things are coming out of you know, the past and saying like, y'all, this ain't new. Welcome to your point, but let's continue to have the conversation and continue to uplift these players. They're competitive. As all get out, you know, and now we're having a different level of conversation around what's happening. So I'm excited. Like, and as sports fans, as basketball fans, it just gives you more of an opportunity to watch, you know, players who are very competitive and going at it. And so you're a rookie. Come on, suit up. If anything, like, and people talked about Jordan and how he was targeted in his rookie year, and what did that do? It made him a beast. And that's what you do. You take
Candace Parker was targeted.
By
Lisa Leslie.
Oh, I remember.
On her own team.
I love Lisa Leslie.
I know, me too.
You know.
But, you know, Candace Parker was targeted for years. You know, this isn't something that's new. But I think also, too, we do have to highlight, you know, people who have gotten the WNBA to this point, you know, to have the Caitlin Clarks, the Angel Reese, the Cardosas, to see all these amazing players play, and some of the players who've been there for years. But I think about even, you know, the whole story, not to even go in details, but Brittany Griner's story. Her story highlighted the discrepancies and some of the gaps in the WNBA as to why she went over to Russia. And I think that also has helped to kind of build up some of the momentum behind WNBA as well, to say we need to pay these players, we need to highlight these players. So there's so much that goes into it. But I'm really excited to see the future of the WNBA. I would say for folks who are hopping on this conversation, just to support the WNBA in a positive way, go to a game, buy the gear, you know, it's just, I don't know. I'm just really excited to see what these women win in the expansion of these teams. So we're going to continue to watch, continue to have these conversations, but you know, we got to highlight the intersectionality around what's happening and all these different nuances and layers that really touch things from an equity standpoint and diversity standpoint. And so we'll continue to do that and continue to shine a light on it. You know? Absolutely.
So now, y'all, it's time for our gem of the day. Gem of the day.
We actually have a gem of the day, which we're excited about. But this is a segment where we really highlight just something that we're grateful for, thankful for. Maybe it could be a quote. It could be something that we're currently doing in our day-to-day lives. So really excited to bring our gem of the day. So Kua, you want to get started?
All right. So my gem of the day is actually a quote, and it's coming from Instagram from Sean. I think his last name is Einhaus. And he does a lot of like motivational quotes and things like that. But it says, when you realize that the certainty you are looking for doesn't exist, you stop seeking control over the future and instead build trust in your ability to handle any future, because the antidote for uncertainty isn't certainty, it's self-trust. Real confidence is not tied to an outcome. Real confidence is knowing that even if you don't get the outcome you desire, nothing is going to stop you. Uncertainty is the nature of life. Self-trust is the antidote. And I will say that this quote really speaks to me in this season of entrepreneurship. We stacked this year, y'all. Like, we stacked this year, and it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's gotten out of control. It feels crazy at times, you know what I mean? But the exciting thing is we're in demand, and I love that, right? Like I love the opportunity to, you know, run a business. You know, Kim came on before, so you saw my business partner on here. And we're just really in a really grateful place and space because we are doing well. And, you know, we did leave the security blanket of a full-time role to get to this point, and we did that for a reason, right? So we're talking about expansion and growing. But sometimes there is uncertainty in entrepreneurship, and there's a space where you're like, who can I talk to about some of this stuff, right? Like, you don't always have people who have gone through exactly the same thing that you've done, but you look for, you know, opportunities just to learn from others. But I will say that there's a lot of uncertainty in it, but it is self-confidence and it is self-trust that will get you through that. And that's what we've really been leaning on, as well as our faith, our family, you know, sometimes looking at our ancestors, what they went through to get to this point, right? And so we're doing it, you know, and just figuring out how you do it as you go. So I will say in entrepreneurship, nobody has all the answers. You literally just got to be a good problem solver and figure the stuff out, and you'll get there. So that's my job.
Yeah, I love it. It's like trust the process, but also have that trust in yourself that you've gotten this far and you can do it. You can keep going.
Keep it going.
Keep it going.
Day at a time.
So my gem is a quote again. But this came from one of my friends who was here earlier, Babatunde Cole. And it's funny because just a quick anecdote about Baba. He's going to listen to this, like, why are you talking about me? But Baba used to be one of, well, first of all, he's my friend, but he also, too, when I was president of the Buffalo Urban League Young Professionals, he was the vice president. And Baba used to hold me down. At the time, I was in school at night for my master's. I was working full time. I was coaching varsity basketball. And I was the president of YP. So
doing the most like
always. But I absolutely love the friendship that I was able to form over the years with Baba. And he's become like a brother to me. And we were earlier today out at lunch and we were just talking and he sent me this quote. And it says, someone with half your IQ is making 10 times as you because they aren't smart enough to doubt themselves. I'm gonna read that one more time.
Say that one more time.
Someone with half your IQ is making 10 times as you because they are not smart enough to doubt themselves.
Okay.
And so to me, it's because this really sits with me because there's times where I do doubt myself. There's times to say, can I do this? Am I worthy enough for this? And I think it's just a human element that we have, right? And so having that conversation with Baba, he's like, listen, he was like, you've proven that you've done this plenty of times. He's like, there's people with half the IQ of you, mediocre, who are doing the same things and they are winning. So why can't you do the same thing? Stop doubting yourself. And I'm like, from the young Babatunde, you know, but he's absolutely right. And it also goes to show that you need friends in your life that are going to push you, who's going to ask you the difficult questions. And then also to get into you to like, why aren't you doing what you said you were going to do, right? Hold you accountable of your goals. And so I really appreciate that. And this quote I'm definitely going to be taking with me.
All right. Yeah. I love it. I love it, y'all. So we had our gem of the day.
Yes.
And we just also want to remind the folks, y'all got to subscribe.
Yes.
We've gotten a lot of great engagement. You know, we're on YouTube. So follow us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yes. Subscribe to what else we got?
Our social media handles, Black Gems Dive In Podcast.
On
Instagram. Facebook, we don't post as much we should, but Black Gems Dive In Podcast as well.
And follow us on there because we're going to start more engagement on all the platforms. So Black Gems Dive In on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. So those are like the three main platforms.
We got to get a LinkedIn.
We do have to get a LinkedIn.
We got to get a LinkedIn because we have a lot of things that we can share. Even like some of the information on Diversity Dispatch and the Hot Topic. We can start to kind of post some of those things out on social as well. So follow us, subscribe to all the channels.
Yes.
Y'all keep locking in,
what we've been doing.
Right.
We're golfing this weekend.
We are.
So we may post about that.
Yeah, we're going to post about that, y'all. We're doing our first. I mean, it's 18 holes.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if I'll make it all.
It's going to be hot, y'all. What are we going to do?
I'm excited.
It's going to be fun though. So follow along.
Yeah.
We should post the day of. So if y'all, it's Sunday, right? So June 9th. Follow us on all these different platforms because we will post us outside hot, having fun, playing golf.
Supporting Police Athletic League.
Yes. Yeah. So thanks for tuning in, y'all. It's another episode in the books.
All right. Bye, Kua.
Bye. Peace.